This episode is brought to you by the Neon Nail Company. Hello, world. Welcome into the 11th episode of the Market Like a Millennial Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Itnyre. And today, folks, we have a conversation for you. A conversation that I've had a couple dozen times over the past 2 to 3 months. It's been a hot topic, and it's all going to surround how you document in the field. Do we use a phone? Do we use a camera? Does an ordinary drone work, or do you need a $30,000 drone? And I'll tell you this much. When I initially was presented this conversation in my direct messages, I had an overreaction to what was being said, right? And the premise is that you should not be documenting off of your iPhone. You should be documenting off of a quality camera. And for someone who has only documented primarily off of a phone and a drone, this kind of got under my skin, and I've had successful results. It's not like I'm posting videos and, they're getting 200 views. These videos are getting hundreds of thousands of views, and they were produced on a phone and a drone. And as I matured in this conversation, there were some great points brought up, right? And it's kind of changed my perspective each and every time that I have this conversation, because I'm one of those guys where I'm set in my opinions. However, if there's good points brought up, I'll definitely consider what's being said. It might even change my mind, right? And I think we should all be like that. I don't think that it should be set in stone one way or the other, because I think a lot of times we look at it as whether it's black or white. It's about what is captured that ultimately makes an impact and how it's captured. So I hope that you guys enjoy this conversation. I think you'll get a lot out of it, not only how to document, but what you should be looking for when you're documenting. One of the first things that I would say that the reason why I prefer a phone over a camera is because, one, I document on both, right? This podcast that we're discussing on right now, I'm using a Sony camera, $2,000 camera. And after this podcast is done, I will have to transfer this over through Dropbox to my phone, which takes up a lot of storage. And then I'll be able to cut down those pieces of content to make this episode and post it on YouTube. That's a very complex process, and that's always been my problem with this conversation. Because if we're looking at how we can get our guys in the field, or how do we get a dedicated person at our company to produce content at scale that makes an impact, when there's more steps to the process rather than shooting, editing, and posting, it's too complicated. My whole thing, and what I kind of built my success off of on social media, was from keeping it simple, right? Keeping it simple to the point where learning how to document and find angles and produce quality content at scale on your phone. So that way, all you have to do is edit it and put it on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you want to post it. Whether it's a reel, short, it doesn't matter. It all works the same. And I found a lot of success with that. But keeping it simple has always made it super efficient for me to produce content on hand. What does the moment that you're capturing call for when it comes to making compelling content? And so that's what we are going to get into today. It's a complex discussion, one that I used to be outraged by, but now I feel like I have a better understanding that everyone can get value out of. When we look at the level of content that is being put out on YouTube, in order to compete, I feel like if you're going to give yourself the best chances of being successful on YouTube, you have to put out quality content. And so breaking out the camera for YouTube makes sense because the amount of quality content on YouTube is vast. It's a lot of content to compete with, period. So the algorithm alone will kill you on YouTube. It's incredibly difficult to be seen. However, if you're going to give yourself the best shot of getting to someone on YouTube, I suggest using a camera. However, if you look at other platforms, that is not the case at all. Whether it's Instagram or even TikTok, I think is a better example. Going on a platform like TikTok is kind of like taking a trip to the Wild Wild West. Anything goes on that platform. And I would almost argue that raw, organic content in general will almost always outperform high production quality content on that platform. Why? That's a great question to ask. I think ultimately because realness is valued on that platform. People are on that platform searching for things that are shocking, outrageous, or entertaining. And that's what you have to understand when you're producing content, is that you have to produce to the platform that you are serving. And I think there's something to be said about how that content is consumed will ultimately determine how it performs. The thing that makes YouTube a complex platform for me is the way that the content is consumed on the platform. You got to think that it might be consumed on a television at home while a family eats dinner. It could be in the background on a computer at the office. It could be on a phone. And how that video is presented on each one of those devices is incredibly different and looks completely different as well. It's one of those things where you're constantly experimenting, trying to figure it out as a creator. Also, one of the questions that I have, maybe the people that are YouTube fans in here that spend a lot of time on YouTube can help me out in the comments below. But I would think that when we look at how the algorithm performs on YouTube, it might be a factor of having those different devices in play when consuming it, right? Because I would think that if someone is viewing a long-form video on their phone, they're going to spend less time on it than if they were consuming it on television or a computer. I may be wrong on that. Let me know if I am in the comments below. I don't know if there's been case studies or anything that we could refer to kind of get an opinion on that. It's an incredibly difficult algorithm as a whole. It's incredibly difficult to crack if you haven't been on the platform for a long period of time. And so that's why I think that you have to give yourself the best opportunity. And that's why when you're filming on YouTube, you want to use a camera. However, if you are on Instagram and TikTok, I think almost the opposite applies. The opposite applies because I would almost argue that the structure of the content that you're producing, the ideas behind it, and how it is presented to the consumer ultimately determines how a video performs on Instagram and TikTok. Consumers on there are on the platform to absorb that information as quickly as possible and get on to the next video. They are looking for what's entertaining to them. They are looking for what's outrageous to them. And when it comes to education, it's almost niche education that they're looking for. They're looking for specific things that they're interested in, and that's what they're going to consume from an educational standpoint. So we have to take that into consideration when we're producing content for both of those platforms. And we also have to realize that I don't think how you capture that piece of content that you're putting out, whether it's on a camera or a phone, I don't think it makes much of a difference on either one of those platforms. And I think if you look at the data across the board, if you just kind of scrolled through your phone, you would see that over and over again. The majority of people that are producing content on those platforms are not using high resolution cameras. So we have to also keep that in mind when we're producing content on those platforms as well. We have to play to the platform once again. And when we discuss efficiency and the value of documenting on a camera compared to a drone and a phone, that's where the conversation breaks down for me. A camera is not efficient to document on, nor is it easy to pull out a camera when a moment presents itself and capture it in real time. And so that's why having a high quality phone is important to me, because if I do have a moment that presents itself and I see a moment that I want to capture, it's very easy to do it with just whipping out my phone and hitting the record button. And it doesn't take much time to get a drone up in the air either. However, when it comes to documenting on a camera, it is incredibly difficult. And I'll never forget a moment at the International Roofing Expo with a camera guy named Benji. VV Designs, I believe it is. Hopefully I got that right, Benji. But we were discussing how I capture my videos, and he was blown away that I just use my phone and my drone. And we went back and forth on cameras and why I don't use the camera personally. And I told him, I said, because the problem is, I said, you're out here documenting at the Roofing Expo. We have to understand that a camera is tough to work with. It takes skill. That's the reason why videographers get paid so much, right? But even if you're a videographer, you have to shoot continuously all day. You have to go back to the hotel, break out the laptop, put all the photos, videos that you produced, and sort through all of them. And that's when you'll really see what you produced that day. And then you have to be able to chop that up, put it into videos. And there's no way, if you're at an event, if you're at a time-sensitive moment, that you're going to be able to get that content out by the end of the day, even the next day, or 3 to 4 days later, right? And so you miss the moment of opportunity to produce content on the fly with cameras because they are inefficient. Not saying that you can't produce quality content afterwards, right? You just miss the moment of it being done in real time because ultimately phones are more efficient than cameras are. Therefore, it's easier to capture what's going on. And if we are producing content for Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all those different platforms, we need to understand that it's okay to produce content off of your phones in those situations, especially when we are dealing with time-sensitive material that we are putting out. It's always more important to capture the moment as it's happening and post it immediately after. You'll almost always get better results if you operate that way. And it's still tough to do on a phone. I experienced that the last time I went out to the Roofing Expo in Vegas. So even me, who I thought, man, this is going to be great. I can get all this stuff edited up back at the hotel and get it out. If we were in Vegas, I was trying to have a good time too, so you're not going to be able to go out and have a good time and then produce content at scale in the background, which I found a balance between the two, but ultimately I wanted to enjoy the moment as well. We put out great content while we were there. It got views. Everything went great. However, we put out the longer form versions of the content that we captured afterwards, and that went perfectly well too. So being able to capture the moments in real time, the message that you put behind your content will ultimately decide the direct results you get organically. Not that what you're capturing isn't important. That is important. But the story that you tell with that piece of content is just as important. And that's what I hope that you understand. Now we can freely talk about one of my favorite parts of the day. Flying my drone is a genuine hobby that I developed through roofing. Initially, it was to keep me from falling off roofs during inspections, right? But as I started getting more into documenting, flying up for post inspections, documenting around roofing builds, there's so many things that drones are useful for. And they are lead magnets when you're in a neighborhood too. I can't tell you how many times I have kids come up asking if they could fly it, ended up introducing me to their parents, and I ended up getting a job off of it. A lot of times people would just see you having it up in the air and stop to ask for a roof inspection. So they are incredibly useful. I would recommend, if anyone's looking to get into documenting around their builds or what they have going on at the roofing company, to invest in a drone. And if I'm starting to fly drone today, one of the best products I could recommend is really any drone with DJI. Any product from DJI that I have bought personally, I have been completely satisfied with. And we're not going to get into every little spec of each DJI drone in this Market Like a Millennial podcast. However, if you guys want to see it, I want to see this video get 50 likes, right? And we'll do it. But you need to understand that where you get in with drones does matter, and it really depends on what you can afford. First, let's start off with that you need drone insurance. That's one thing that I ignored for far too long. I crashed 5 drones before I decided to get insurance. And the reason why I got insurance on my most recent drone is because it was really expensive. So I am currently flying the DJI Air 3. It's a fantastic product. It's a world of difference. The thing cuts through air like butter. And I've also seen the Mavic series in action. I had a customer that was a drone enthusiast, saw my videos, and decided to give me a call to do a roof. And we geeked out on drones for quite some time. And you know, the thing about the Mavic is that there's a lot of benefits to it. However, it is heavier. It doesn't move around much in the air, which that makes a difference in overall presentation of what you get from the drone. Now, it's far superior than the Air 3, but if I'm getting into the market today and I'm looking to produce high quality videos with a drone, I'm going with the Air 3 as the best bet for you as a consumer. Now, if you're looking to just take photos, I don't think a Mini is a bad bet. However, when you get it up in the air, even if you're a skilled drone pilot, it can be pretty difficult to capture moments on the fly with a Mini, because not only is the picture quality nowhere near what it looks like on an Air 3, as far as maneuverability in the air, it's hard to maintain certain positions. Now, granted, there's automated settings that you can put it on and it'll fly itself around your build. However, I prefer to fly manually because I feel like you'll get more authentic moments out of your drone when you do that. And so when you see my videos on TikTok, Instagram, or Facebook, that is me flying that drone and maneuvering it in the air. And that's why I think my content stands out from others, is because it's my own movements and what I'm seeing. But with the Minis, it can be pretty difficult to maintain positions in the air. And that's where I think that it's worth, if you plan on getting into producing high quality videos for shorts, for Instagram Reels or TikTok, I think it's important to invest in a high quality drone. One last piece of advice that I have for anyone investing in a drone: invest the time in getting to know your drone as well. I suggest that you go out into a field where there's no trees around, get it up in the air, fly it around, get used to how it moves, and spend as much time flying it as possible. You should not be getting to know your drone on a roofing project with trees all around it. I can promise you that's not going to go well for you. Take it slow, spend as much time as possible learning that drone in and out, and you'll be successful in flying it. But as we wrap up this podcast, extra credit as far as wisdom when it comes to flying drones, whether it's day one or you're 5 years into it, at some point in time, you will crash. That's why I have stressed insurance is so important. Owners, don't get mad at your guys. It's bound to happen. It happens to me all the time. But if you have insurance, it's going to save you a ton of money. And one other little thing I'll throw out there, it's never happened to me personally. However, if you fly a drone into a house, inspect the area that you hit. And if it did cause any damage, make sure to take care of that homeowner. Do the right thing. Because at the end of the day, we are setting the gold standard of contracting around here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, supporting everything that I do, whether it's here on YouTube or over on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I appreciate the support. Our numbers have been going through the roof, and it wouldn't be possible without you guys. I appreciate everyone who gets value out of this podcast. If you can share it, like it, comment, and be part of the conversation, it means the world to me. It gives me something to look at and ultimately come up with future episodes with questions that you guys put in the comments below. We'll be able to go back and see what's important to you, include that in future episodes ahead. And much love to all you guys. Thank you for tuning in to the 11th episode of the Market Like a Millennial podcast.